Hey, this is Carson from 3D Joes and Operation Recall, and you're watching Influencing Entrepreneurs.
After years of teaching entrepreneurship and consulting business owners, I realized that true knowledge comes from the wins and losses of those entrepreneurs. These are the stories of those business leaders. I'm Cassmer Ward, and this is Influencing Entrepreneurs. Today we're talking with Carson Mataxis with Locomotion Media Group. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So is Locomotion Media Group the first company that you've ever started?
Well, when I graduated college in 2002, I immediately set up a LLC incorporated in North Carolina called Scrap Design LLC. Don't ask me why. And so I did freelance work under that banner for, I would say...
And what type of freelance work was this?
All video and animation. So when I went to college, I ended up getting 2 degrees, art and design and mass communications. And so I set a goal early on that I wanted to be employable in video production very early on in my college career. And so I only took courses that would help me achieve that goal. And it worked out because I was employable by my 4th year out of the 5 years that it was going to take me. I got a video production job with a video production company. They were a little older too, right? So every practitioner there, I would say, looking back at it now, I was early 20s then. So everybody seems older when you're 20s, then I'm mid 40s now. So they were probably my age. They were probably 40s and 50s. And I was 22, 23.
And you're probably know all the newest technology.
Oh, absolutely.
You've probably already grown more into where the industry was than they were.
Yes, that's what happens in the creative industry if you fall into the trap of not continuing to train yourself, learn new things, and establish new styles, right? It's just like everybody has those parents that they talk about that are stuck on the music they grew up on. I've always tried in my professional career to not be that way. Don't get stuck in one certain aesthetic or one certain style, continue to grow my skill set and continue to evolve stylistically to keep up with what's happening. So coming out of school, I started my first LLC as a 22-year-old, Scrap Design LLC, and I did freelance video and animation under that.
On top of working with this agency?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. I've always believed you need to have multiple revenue streams from day one. Started my first job at Russell's Fish House at 14 years old, and was also still doing, yard work for the parents for money or, any other way. I was doing commissioned illustrations for people in my hometown. Anything I could do, I was always hustling, buying and selling comic books to support my comic book habit. I've always believed in having multiple revenue streams.
So what ends up being your last W-2 job?
My last W-2 job was at Duke University. I worked there from 2012 to 2015.
So you leave there?
Yep.
And then what's the first?
I was terrified. I took my parents to Cracker Barrel.
Right. All right. Where all life decisions are made.
Yeah. And I told them the news that the position had been eliminated. It was a reduction in force. I told my parents about it. I remember my brother came to the lunch, and it was very soothing and very calming. They were all like, "Look, you've always just been super ambitious. You've got an amazing work ethic, and you're incredibly talented. So there's no doubt you're going to land on your feet. Just had to figure out how to make it happen." And so I immediately incorporated my second company because I let the scrap design one go long ago. So I made Locomotion Media Group. And to me, Locomotion was, it's all about powerful storytelling. Nothing more powerful than a locomotive. And I do motion graphics or motion pictures is what I tend to create for people. So video production is motion pictures and motion graphics is design and animation. So Locomotion Media Group was born. And my first year out of Duke University, I doubled my salary.
So how do you start finding clients?
So luckily I had been working for other people for 13 years. And my biggest piece of advice, number 2, right behind setting long-term goals and work steadily to achieve those goals, is build your network as you go. Remember, I'm terrible with names, so I'm not one of those guys that's going to tell you, you have to remember every name. You don't. But be really good at filing away emails, or be really good about adding people to your address book and putting in contextual notes so you'll remember who they are, why you remember them. Go so far as to write down, their family names, their wives' names, their kids' names. People love that, man. When you put some effort into just jotting down notes, and then when you talk with them, you refresh yourself. You don't have to remember everything, but it shows that you care, that you wrote it down and you read it again and you remember it when you talk talk to them again. Like, how's Jenny doing? They love that, right? So anyway, I had 13 years of working with other people, so professionals in the industry across various practice areas. Luckily, the advertising agency, you work with a ton of different industry verticals. When you're in an advertising agency, you're not pigeonholed into one type of industry. So, there was healthcare and consulting and, educational stuff. It was just across the board at the ad agency. So I had a really good, diverse list of professional colleagues that I could reach out to, and then clients that I had worked for that were more than happy to work with me outside of the auspices of the advertising agency, where they were billing me for $200, $250 an hour. I could now bill them $75 an hour, and they were thrilled.
Where we met is honestly probably where our passions.
Yes, we met at the intersection of our hobbies.
Yeah, at a comic convention.
Yep.
Heroes Con every year. Been there since God knows when.
Great comic book convention.
And you had the most beautiful book.
Thank you.
Just a prestige format, like of every 80s G.I. Joe, like blister art history story. Number one, sharing that passion. What drives you to put this together?
Yeah, so this was absolutely a passion project and a hobby and something to, for my own well-being. One of the things that I wanted to make sure I touched on was always relentlessly pursue creating, right? If you're wired like me, that's going to make you feel good every day. I always sleep better at the end of the day if I've made something that I believe in that I wanted to make, right? And so in 2012, I started 3djoes.com, which was to document every single G.I. Joe, a real American hero figure, which spanned from 1982 to 1994, my childhood. And that just, I don't know, it's kind of cemented. I already loved G.I. Joe,
right?
But it kind of cemented this lifelong passion for the brand that still resonates today. And so in 2012, there was already an archive that was out there that documented the toys, but it was crowdsourced. And so it was very inconsistent in terms of the qualities of the assets, right? God bless them. They did work on this for a couple decades before it came to an untimely end. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants with them, right? So yojo.com came before me, and there's another author, Mark Balomo, that had done a lot of work that came before me. And so I always like to mention those people. I'm not the first person to do this, but I went to design school. I do photography and videography for a living, and I knew I could capture more high quality, more consistent assets and deliver a website that was more elegant, that was mobile friendly. And I incorporated 360 photography, which is why I call it 3D Joes. So when you go look at the figures and the vehicles, you can inspect them from every angle, and that's a cool little niche. And I had met some of the creators of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, as early as 2013. I had traveled to Rhode Island and recorded audio interviews with them, mic'd them up, and sat there and talked for hours. And then I would go home and cut these little snippets up and put, Ron Rudat talking about Snake Eyes goes on the Snake Eyes page, but it also goes on the Ron Rudat creator profile. So if you look under pre-production creator profiles, you'll see hours of audio interviews and hundreds, if not thousands, of images.
Are you able to monetize any of this, or this is just kind of...
I choose not to monetize it. How about that? I'm getting over 1 million page views a year on that website from over 60,000 people, and I have never monetized it through advertising. Now, why is that? Because if you're going to build an audience, if you want to make money from a community, you want to passionately build things that you genuinely want to make. You don't just want to make money, but you want to be able to do that a greater amount of time. You have to earn that community's trust. People have to believe in you and think that you're not just some person there to try to squeeze a dollar out of them. And I definitely am not. Come in, consistently work, set a long-term goal of building this comprehensive archive, consistently work on it, and consistently share it with that community, not asking for anything. And that helped me build the audience. And then I was like, I really should try out this Kickstarter thing. I've got this community built now. They trust me. They're coming to the site every day. They know I'm a good person. They want to help me make things for them. The very first Kickstarter I did was in 2013, if I remember correctly, and it was to print some posters, right? So I had funded the first poster on my credit card, $3,000, and it took me 2 or 3 months to sell enough to just break even on that, but I loved it because this poster was every single figure from 1982 to 1989 on one big white poster. It was very elegant, and that was my first successful project. People told me they love the posters, but they're running out of wall space. Can't you do a book? The idea literally came from the community to do the book. Second Kickstarter, third Kickstarter, fourth Kickstarter, all the way up to 6 was just doing the books, right? And that was, maybe 18,000, 22,000, 28,000.
So it's
up, yeah.
incrementally
And it ended at 45, right? And so we had $45,000 on that last one. It allowed me to fund the last 2 books in this giant, like double boxed slipcase. It was very nice. So when 2020 hit, COVID hit, it was the perfect storm of people were stuck at home. They were reconnecting with the toys of their youth. And these books had been out of print for over a year now. So from that, explosion in interest and the lack of availability of product, when I went to launch the omnibus hardcover in the spring of 2022, I raised $393,000. So keep in mind, the last Kickstarter had only raised 45 from 420 people. This raised almost 400,000.
And how long?
In 2 weeks from 3,000 people. So I immediately put it up for pre-order on 3djoes.com, the archive that I've been building since 2012, and we raised another $100,000. So when it came time to hit print and decide what size print run I wanted to do, I had, after drop pledges and fees, about $360,000 from Kickstarter, $100,000 through the website, and I went ahead and threw in $90,000 of my own money, and I spent $550,000 on this book to produce 8,400 sets. I've only got 1,500 sets left, and I took delivery of those last December. It's October now. So in 10 months, I've sold through over 80% of the inventory. So that $90,000 gamble that I made in buying up extra inventory was a good call.
So that leads into your most current project.
Yeah. So it's crazy, man. It's crazy how these 2 big ideas literally popped at the same time within like 6 months of each other. So the book, obviously huge success, spring of 2022. Later that year, I launched the Kickstarter for Operation Recall, and we beat it. We raised $415,000. So that was a crazy tax return year. I met with a CPA and made some moves, right? But I think we did well with it. So where the next big idea came from was actually the first big idea, I would say, the omnibus hardcover. I had been meeting with these creatives and building their creator profiles. And I said, you know what, let's showcase your skill set and let's document it. Meaning, let me come to your house, let me film with you while you're doing what you do. What you did in the 80s that was so amazing, that impacted a generation of kids. Let's document that for posterity. And they all agreed to it. So we decided we were going to make one all new action figure. And it was going to be everything from ideation sketches to the brand manager marking it up, to revising the sketches, to creating final line art, to creating color studies that gave you all the different color options, to creating figure sculpture sheets that the sculptor would work off of to make sure that the figure was sculpted exactly how the designer wanted it.
Literally a toy company.
The entire process. And I was already familiar with this process because I had already created their creator profile pages and interviewed them in depth about what was their process. Yeah. So I was like, let's just take that process and film it and let's do it. Let me see it. Let me document it and share it with everybody. And they were all excited about it. So we were just going to do one figure, and this was going to be one chapter in the book, right? Creating an all new action figure. And the idea got too big to be held down by this first idea, or to be balled up and packaged with this first idea. So one of the tips that I would give is never be afraid to demerge your ideas, right? If you think one idea is building on the other idea, but then you realize, holy shit, there's so much opportunity here with this. This is a big idea of its own. Demerger. Break that off, make it something new. And so I decided to do that. The chapter of the book went away entirely. And so it became its own endeavor. I've worked with Hasbro to try to get them to license it, make it G.I. Joe official. But as of right now, they're not taking me up on it. But again, like the book, they didn't license it for 7 years either, right? And here it is, licensed and branded. So we'll see, that might happen, but we're preparing as if it's not going to. And so we're calling it Operation Recall, because in the military, the government can recall retired soldiers in times of great need for the country to come in and, say, for example, when COVID hit and they had to build all those temporary hospitals in Manhattan, they recalled some retired troops to do that. So recall was just kind of front of mind for me then. And so I decided, well, that's exactly what we're doing with these old creatives. We've got the figure designers. We got 2 of them. We got the brand manager. We got the package painter. We've got 2 contract sculptors. We got the packaging executive that did the branding. We've got the author that wrote the file card and the comic books. Like we literally, the analogy I use with people that aren't familiar with the toy industry is basically I got the Beatles back together to make an all new album.
So as we wrap up, short quiz.
Sure.
Best G.I. Joe figure from 82 to 94.
Okay, so personally, it's going to be Falcon because my dad was the Green Beret. Falcon's the Green Beret from 1987. That's a little biased though, and I accept that. The best sculpture, 1985 Snow Serpent, a flawless figure.
Agree on best sculpture, best figure. You were wrong. It is Storm Shadow.
I feel another presence.
That presence feels you as well. Cobra!
1984 or 1988?
The 84.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with that.
Most accessories, everything.
He had great accessories.
Sleeping gas.
Best deluxe figure.
Best deluxe figure.
Yeah.
Now, are you talking back in the day, what they would call deluxe, like a snow job or an Alpine?
One that came with like a small little vehicle.
Oh, okay. Well, the best selling was Zartan with the Chameleon, but I think the Chameleon's kind of weak. I love Zartan as a figure. He had that color changing plastic. It's very mysterious. He was just awesome.
My, what a memorable face you have.
I'm sure you're a big hit on Halloween, Zartan.
If I look at best figure with a small vehicle, and I'm talking purely figure design, I'm going to go with 1990 Windchill. It's an amazing figure. It really is. And he's got better skis than Snow Job. He's got these little skis with this little gun on it with the magazines coming out. He's got a nice big rifle. But what I really like is the figure design and the figure sculpt.
Lastly, Serpentor.
Behold the ultimate Cobra Emperor, Serpentor. Serpentor!
Good or scar on the franchise?
I will say it irreparably changed the franchise. And it just pushed G.I. Joe in an entirely very fantastical sci-fi direction. Not my favorite direction, but that's okay. I realize every 4 or 5 years, you have to replace your audience. If you're a toy maker, the kids are going to age out every 4 to 5 years. At least that's how it was back in the day. And so the people like me that grew up with the earlier stuff, that wasn't for us.
Yeah.
That was for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And the stuff that was made in the 90s, that was for the next 4 or 5 years. So when you get these early 80 guys talking about how they hate the neon 90s, that wasn't for you. You know, that was 2 generations of kids later.
Well, Carson, I really appreciate your time. I do want to say good job.
Thank you.
This is Carson Mataxis, and now you know.
And knowing is half the battle. Yo, Joe.
That's how you endo episode right there.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
Thanks for watching. To watch more episodes of Influencing Entrepreneurs, be sure to subscribe on YouTube at Nexagy Education.